I would like to have Eva here and can talk a little bit about regulations, especially in Europe. And later we'll have Darren to talk about the regulations in the US. So, let's hear it for Eva.
When you say regulation, you make it seem so boring.
And so let's talk about, figure out another name. What is the less intimidating?
No, I would say...
Compliance is even worse, that's why.
It cannot get better.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is actually the year where we're trying to have some, let's say, rules for market and consumer protection and investor protection and harmonize the environment in Europe for crypto assets, for GLT, and I just called to have a special, let's say, discussion for NFTs. I wouldn't say more than that, because not everything goes under the existing regulation. So in order to do that, what I usually do is I'm trying to understand the extent of the technology and the possibilities to make sure that we will treat it in an appropriate way that will allow innovation to happen. Since it depends what kind of NFTs you're using, you're, let's say, issuing. So if it has to do with IP rights, it's different. If it has to do with securities, it's already covered by the ongoing legislative initiative. But it's quite interesting what we've been doing. So we can discuss whatever you want.
Course, yeah. The thing with the NFT is like terrifying, especially with people that was talking here in Greece, because they're afraid, like, what if cryptocurrency is outlawed in Europe? Like, what if they don't allow me to control crypto, or they say you don't allow, you cannot own crypto, and if you transact in crypto, then you're a criminal. Like Jon said before, like, what happens if all of a sudden I have an NFT, I have a ticket, and Europe decides, like, if you own any cryptocurrency, it is a token and it is a security, and if you're trading NFTs, you are actually a criminal. That's the strength, the thing that most of people, like, are a little bit skeptical, and they're also trying to, they hope that we won't have a GDPR for NFTs. Or some, you understand where I'm getting to, something that is trying to protect the consumer, but then maybe overprotects them and doesn't let innovation move as fast. Because sadly, businesses try to exploit any open window to move faster and profit, but sometimes, yeah, consumers are at the end of the speak.
Okay, let me try to set a bit the scene on what's happening here, if I may. So we had to deal with, when we started this effort, last year basically, I called for an understanding of the crypto assets, since I realized what Bitcoin was doing as of 2014. So it seemed to be like an amazing, let's say, philosophy around it of decentralization. And it's very tough, of course, to regulate because it's completely decentralized, which is not the case with anything else I would be able to compare it with. If today you ask, because I'm trying to ask like even professors or like experts to explain to me DeFi, decentralized finance, so tough because it could never actually be completely decentralized. We can definitely reduce decentralization, but not completely. So there are liabilities. So if something happens to you, you invest in NFTs or crypto assets, and then somebody takes everything and leaves, or you try to enter your wallet or the platform or the exchange, and it doesn't exist anymore, which is the case. In Africa it happened. I think 2 guys left with 2 billion, 0.2, and they're trying to get them, but they are gone. So since you don't want this to happen, and it could create, let's say, risks for the financial system of Europe, and also it's cross-border, so it has several challenges to face, we decided to see how we can protect consumers and market and investors, but at the same time to allow innovation to happen and to have a tech-neutral position, so not to ban the technology.
Of course, yeah.
There were actually some people that tried to say, listen, we don't understand it, let's ban it. So this was an approach that some people had, even until recently. Also for more special aspects of the technology, like proof of work vs proof of stake, let's ban completely proof of work because of its
it's an easy solution, guys.
with exceptions, and keep proof of stake. And when I was like, we have to be tech neutral. We cannot ban the technology. We can, let's say, explain what are the rules it should follow in order to be, let's say, accepted at an EU harmonized environment. I had to struggle, maybe even I'm still struggling, to make sure that this will not be the approach. And I think we're going to have a more friendly environment in Europe, as we called for in 2015. But we have 5,600 crypto assets. I have the final note I had was like a year ago, so they're a lot.
Wow.
And we just had 55 stable coins. Half of them, they are about 5 billion of market value, which is already important enough to see how we can deal with it. And some of them, they go under specific regulations we have. So it's the MiFID II and the CSDR. I don't know if you're familiar with these regulations.
Sadly, I am. The MiFID II, I am.
You are.
It is very restrictive, but for the protection of the consumer.
It's for, so basically, not everything has to go under both regulations, but it's either the one or the other that applies, so it has different applications. So if something acts like it should be under the financial services regulation, then it should. We try to have a separate, let's say, a hybrid box where you could have exceptions in both ways, also of the CSDR. Some people try to have both regulations apply, which would make it impossible. So what we're trying to do is to make sure we will have protection for something that is very clear of how you can use it, but also to have, let's say, a different approach by understanding the use, not the technology itself, or how it was designed to be, but also how it's developing to be. So what's the market value, or in the end, how it's ending up to be, to treat it like a specific way. In the case of NFTs, so we try to make sure that we will exclude, as I said, everything that's under the MiCA regulation, the crypto assets. It's coming this year, and it's going to talk about what are the stable coins that are under this MiCA, and what are the other currencies, actually, crypto assets that are being under this scope. And we don't talk about everything else that is in DLT. So we have two files, the MiCA, the crypto assets, and we have the DLT, where you can in both issue, trade, and post-trade, and we try to control how you can do that, who is doing the settlement, who is the supervisory authority to achieve that, to make sure that there is some control, ex ante and ex post, before and after also you issue these tokens, and also to harmonize between the European member states. I think when we conclude, we're just going to have a European framework, and we don't have to go to each country, because you told me also to do something in Europe, we have to be able to understand to have legal certainty in order to have a marketplace here. So, good and bad thing. I was discussing a bit on how we can treat the NFTs, and what we see is that the proposed definition of crypto assets is a digital representation of value or rights which may be transferred and stored electronically using distributed ledger technology or similar technology. So it includes NFTs generally under MiCA. However, when you have NFTs that they are basically, let's say, unique and not fungible, which is mostly the case with NFTs, then it seems that they are not required to publish a prospectus, like a crypto asset white paper. You remember this obligation? And this means also it's not covered by this regulation, so we have to cover it separately. So the purpose and the use of the token for me should be the important thing. So if it's not to store value, or if it's not to exchange, but it's used by, or it's issued by artists, athletes, or natural person to have a certificate of authenticity basically online. It should be out of the scope, so to have less provisions.
Would I be able to, let's say that I'm an artist and I create an NFT and I publish it, and somebody buys it and starts trading the NFT?
So there is a small difference. So it depends. If it grants holder-specific rights linked to financial instruments, such as profit sharing, then it's different. It has security issues. But if it's admitted on trading or trading platforms, in trading platforms of crypto assets, like Coinbase.
But if it's not on Coinbase and it's like
so when we have marketplaces that offer auction services, so it's different, then there should be exceptions, and then we have to deal with it separately. It's not covered at this point. So we have to cover it at the European level. Everybody has some kind of understanding of the IP rights, but at this point, they could be treated as security tokens, but still the IP rights, they cannot be really transferred. So if you sell something that, I don't know, Justin Bieber gives you, you are not the IP rights, the owner, or if he writes a song, you are not the author.
Of course.
You have the rights to trade or to auction it, but you're not the creator. So here we have different protections that apply. Once you're able to make money out of it or to sell it, not in an auction way, but in a trading way, as if it's like a way to exchange value, then it has different regulations. So it's a bit, we have to separate what's the use of the
So
NFTs.
if it is an auction, you are right, it's different. Usually the NFTs are auctions, they are not traded on like Coinbase, Kraken, it's different.
Exactly.
But what happens if I am in the US and I issue NFTs and people start buying them in Europe? Because I cannot stop customers because I don't know them. Like I don't do any KYC, so I don't know if people from Europe will grab them.
Listen, first of all, AML regulation, anti-money laundering directive, will apply in any case, basically in everything. And this is up to the platform to acquire permissions to act with European players. So if they enter the market through a crypto exchange and they transfer euros into tokens, then the crypto exchange has the obligation to make the KYC and the AML. So this is done there, and then they can enter your marketplace. But if they want to have some legal, certainty and protection, if something goes wrong, then we don't have a European law that's protecting them, correct?
Got it. So if you somehow have money and you buy from the US and you lose them, good luck. You should have paid more attention. You should have used the platform with KYC, AML, and everything.
I normally do not make it complicated because we also have consumer law applying in some cases. You have to be very careful because it could be complicated also for the owner of the marketplace. So I have a friend that he invested 1,000 bitcoins when it was not that much, and he supported a new idea, let's say, in a white paper, which didn't manage to fulfill what they promised. And they are trying to get a return of the bitcoins that were not being used, especially now that they have like such a value, because they say, listen, you are investing 1,000 bitcoins. Definitely you're not moving fast enough. It's been like 5 years. Now you are holding like an amount of money that I'm sure you don't need to spend to fulfill what you promised in any case. So what are my rights to get it back? It's super delicate. It's 50-50 if he's going to make it. But they entered consumer law and they found a specific jurisdiction. I'm not sure, I think it's Netherlands, for example. And they have a different case in Argentina. So it's so global that he can choose a specific jurisdiction to go against the platform that promised specific things and they didn't fulfill. So it could be dangerous for the, let's say, for the issuer of these tokens, but in the end, because it's so complicated, he took the risk of entering this market, and I'm not sure they could actually, track them down. In the end, I think consumer law will protect them and they will have to get something back. But you understand how complicated it is when you don't have legal certainty, you invest, and whoever invests, like everybody here, they don't know what happens if you're gone.
Of course. And we were talking just before that GDPR tries to protect the consumer, tries to do XYZ. The problem with crypto, the huge problem, and that was the discussion before, was that when you make a transaction using your wallet, the person that received the money on the platform now knows your spending patterns and knows how much money you have in your wallet. So we were saying before that in my platform, OMG Drops, at some moment I was like, I have so many agencies, so many people are buying NFTs, why don't I sort them by net worth so I know who to, who should I market and advertise to. And this is exactly the opposite of what Europe is trying to do all this time. Europe says like, obviously for a very good reason, because people need to be able to make purchases without revealing who they are, how much money they are, what they bought and when they bought other stuff. So it would be interesting how Europe will try to say, guys, we need to slow down a little bit and find a solution to this problem, because this is an issue at this moment. It's a huge issue.
Listen, no, first GDPR applies only in Europe, basically.
Of course,
okay?
yeah.
Or whoever wants to collaborate with Europe, they have to have this protection of the European citizens, like the right to be forgotten. This goes just for European citizens. So you remember what happened when WhatsApp and Facebook, they said that we're going to change the rules and everything, all the metadata of your chat, not the content, but who you spoke to, how often, how long, from where, your location, we have access to, so we can target you from Facebook for advertisements. So especially when you use data that were given to you through WhatsApp for a telecommunication service, for a completely different platform that has a different scope, this is not permitted for GDPR because it has a different purpose. But they said it would exclude European citizens. So whoever spoke to you, they would be covered. The problem with GDPR is that it talks about sensitive data only, and it's up to each jurisdiction, each member state, to clarify exactly how strict the rules are going to be. But definitely it gives rights to users. In case of transaction data, what happens now is if they target you without knowing your name, but they just send you back in an automated way an advertisement because you're a very good client, then you are protected because it's anonymous. Also, if you combine like free metadata, usually you can track down the identity of a person. If you don't do that, but in an automated way you advertise to them, then you're safe from GDPR. Although we are now trying to put some rules for the industrial data, so everything that is not sensitive data. So it's going to be protected, it's going to be clear, but in the end, if you, let's say, reward for making use of those kind of data, or if you notify, or if by design you don't hold data that you shouldn't, and since they are being generated constantly, you will be able, in any case, to use plenty of those. You're going to have a lot of ways to use them, but in a fair way also for the consumers. Because imagine if the platform that's being used can have access to your platform too through, I don't know, a third party, like through maybe Google, and they can buy your list of clients, and they say, listen, the best people that bought from Jon, they are like these 10, and I send you the list, I don't tell you their names, but I send you the list, so you can also advertise to them your NFT platform. You wouldn't like that. Would you?
No, I wouldn't. No, of course.
You wouldn't? No. Maybe you would. But I have like brands that they say, listen, my client list, I don't want it to be shared with somebody else. I want to have protection of it.
I was saying that this is creepy, and it's crypty, like the crypto creepy word, like the mass of the word, because at some moment by mistake you bought something in a platform, and all of a sudden you start getting advertisements from other people for things that you haven't disclosed to that platform. So it's even worse than Google tracking you, because now they know when specifically how much money I spent to buy this. They know probably who am I, because they can track me down on OpenSea that I bought this NFT,
Exactly.
and I have my name on OpenSea, like Jon, for example. And then they know my net worth, because they see that my wallet has all these NFTs, all this money, so I am a high net worth individual, and now they can track me, they can do more stuff. So this would be definitely an issue in the future. In the US, it's not that big of an issue yet, but as more platforms, NFTs, more things happening, this would be an issue. Like I predict that there will be company that is doing advertisement services specifically based on your blockchain interactions. Like, you will hire them, they will start looking all the transactions that happen, and they're like, don't worry, we know who these people are, we'll find them down, we'll advertise everywhere.
But can I say something that I don't think many people know? So first of all, you have a new administration, new government. So this would, I think, this means that there will be some rules that we follow, if I'm not mistaken. You know that you don't even have to do a search of something, just as discussing about what we're discussing now. It could lead to all of you receiving advertisements on NFTs. Not because you Google search it, but because your microphone is actually constantly on. And it's on because you don't have the option to switch off while you're not using an application. So once you open it for Messenger or for Facebook or for Google, it's always open. So you could like track specific words that you're using. Once somebody paid and say, listen, whoever talks about, I don't know, NFTs, send in this advertisement. Or whoever wants to go to Mexico, I don't know, for vacations, send them this offer. And once they track this word, you receive an advertisement. Because I recently, I was talking about something. I was talking about a backpack. I was looking for one, and I didn't have one. And I didn't Google search backpack, right? So I was like discussing inside my house. And I received an advertisement of like a nice backpack. And I was like, okay. This is not a coincidence. It's not like God's telling me that I have to buy a backpack. It's actually my microphone that I use it because I use these communication services, and I don't have the option to switch off. So when you're using Uber, if you are, and this I think it's banned, innovation friendly, we have TaxiBit there. You have the option to have your location always shared or not shared or once or while using the application. This was not the option like 3 years ago. It was like on off. So every time you use Uber, if you don't want to be tracked, you would go to the settings, you would say allowed to use my application, you use Uber, and then you go back, you switch off, and then you know you're not being followed. Now you have this option, but you don't have for your microphone, for your cameras. And this is very easy also to hack, and also your metadata are really available to all the telecom companies. So I don't think it's a bad thing to try to protect users from understanding if they want to have their data being shared or not.
I agree.
Because I think also they protect you in other ways.
Oh, I agree,
And listen, John, if anybody has like ideas on how we can facilitate use of data for good, but at the same time, you don't need all this data that you're receiving, I guess.
Of course,
Maybe you want like the top 10, you want like IP addresses to send them like advertisement, but that's it. I don't think you need the rest. So I think to make sure that we will have a level of protection there, it's going to be important.
Oh yeah, it's very, very important because now we're talking about money, and I think the advertisement is going to be even more aggressive in
also
the future.
For attacks, now that you mentioned.
Oh and attacks literally on the street. Like people have been kidnapped for having money on their wallets. Like I remember the story with the Tim Ferriss.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, there are people that, first of all, there are people that they disappeared and they don't know if they actually left with the money or they were actually kidnapped. And Tim Ferriss had a lot of issues. Like one of the most recent, like a couple of years ago, was he was doing something with cryptocurrency, a conference, I don't even remember, in Italy, Spain, no idea. And when he arrived at the airport, there was a person with a cards waiting for him, and he was saying like Tim Ferriss, and then he remembered that he never actually said his name. Whenever he's booking with a pseudonym. So somebody was holding a Tim Ferriss, so he thought about calling the company, and the company said like, we still haven't sent anybody, he's on their way. So he doesn't know if something bad would have happened, but
probably.
Yes, but there was somebody waiting there without him,
So they can hijack like your iPhone, and they can get access to all your, let's say, crypto assets because they are anonymized. They just they're controlled by
they just grab your phone.
keys, and that's it.
They tell you, we need the keys, That's it. They move the money in it. So it is serious situation. People shouldn't disclose their accounts like that.
Thank you for that, because like when we're having these discussions, and after a while you realize that everybody who has a very smart idea, they actually want regulation.
Oh yeah.
Because they are protected and they can still, innovate, but in a safe way also for them.
Yeah.
Because you can suddenly become liable, and let's say that if Europe has some issues of regulation, if you get busted in US, then good luck, no?
Oh yeah. Definitely you don't want to mess with the US government 100%.
I think there is
there are a couple of questions.
Yeah.
3 points. The first is the point with the microphone. I now use it as an Alexa. So I say in the morning, I need that, and then I wait for the ad in order to choose what to buy. So that's one way to put it. Another thing is on the integrations and the data sharing you discussed is that the fact that Facebook shared data with Netflix and Spotify, like the private messages, right?
Yeah.
And then these guys like targeted, like in order to grow the platform. And the other thing is that in crypto, like people who are high profile, they're usually anonymous, like Plan B and all that, and all these guys, because it's gonna get nasty, that whole kidnapping.
Oh yeah, but I'm not talking about the multi-billionaires. Even the millionaires, because the millionaires, maybe there are people that they got into crypto the last 4 years, 3 years, so they made a lot of money from the NFTs. They don't expect that all of a sudden there are people that are tracking addresses and say, these are the 1,000 addresses that have the most money, they made the most money this year. Let's figure out where they are and let's try to, do something nasty. It is a situation.
And still, like right now, if somebody on 2015 had said that he's mining Bitcoin,
oh yeah.
he's in trouble now.
Oh yeah. Maybe he sold his Bitcoin. Yeah.
Both in accident.
Yeah, or a boating in an accident. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is already liability.
Of course, and I remember that Facebook was planning to have their own cryptocurrency, which I forgot the name. Yeah. And the main concern was obviously the regulatory part, how they can integrate that with Europe, with US, all this stuff. But I clearly remember when I talked with the head of product at Facebook, the main target was not just making money, collecting information from the people that pay for the services. So for example, here is the coin, maybe we'll give you $1,000 from our brand new coin to spend around, because we want you to spend, because then we know exactly, not the ad that you might click, the thing that you will buy. So they have the intention. The moment they have intention in their ads, that's it. So paying $1,000 to somebody to know exactly what they really buy, it's the most valuable method.
And Amazon is also launching cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I think everybody, so it's going to be very interesting. I don't want to say decades, because usually in cryptocurrencies things are happening every year. So, yeah.
Eva, taking it back to the regulation part, we understand that there are discussions ongoing at the European Union level, and it would be great if we had more transparency in what's going to brew in the following months. So what's the best way to follow these discussions or drafts that are coming out?
I don't know if it's useful to know at this point, because now it's exiting the Parliament's level. So the way it works, the Parliament with the Commission and the Council, so the 3 levels, because we co-legislate, is we initiate. So 2015, I said we should monitor and see how we can create legal certainty to be innovation friendly. I did that because before the resistance grows, you prepare the ground for innovation friendly legislation, which was very important at that point. Everybody wanted to ban everything because it was like I was treated like I was a crypto anarchist in the parliament, and it took me like a year and a half to host an event discussing blockchain there. Even me. So I felt that if you don't understand it, this is what happens when you are ignorant of the technology. So we called for legislation. Then around 2018, we started trying to regulate crowdfunding. So basically we realized that the situation with the ICOs needed to have a special treatment, and then they prepared the files that arrived to us in 2019. The communication on 2020, and now it's in our hands. So the Commission prepared everything. They sent us a paper, text, where you can find it online, what the Commission wanted to achieve. Now the Parliament came and it's amending everything. So we are adding our contribution of our perspective. In the case of DLT, for example, we don't want to have gatekeepers, the traditional system. We'll try to open up more to innovation, to be able to be licensed easily, not to have to become a bank in order to be able to issue any token. Yeah. This is what was proposed basically, so we try to open it up. And we try to make it more easy for innovation to be tested, so we are creating a pilot for DLT. So the Parliament is more open-minded, I would say, although we had some approaches like the ones I mentioned. Let's ban it, since we don't have to deal with it, or because it has environmental challenges. Also, I think there are many solutions now that they can be used. Let's ban it because it doesn't, it has a heavy footprint against the environment. But then when you talk to experts, and we have this ongoing procedure, like last week, you have EIB saying that the existing technologies being used, it could take like 3-4 days until you have a settlement being taken care of, and this could actually have a worse environmental footprint if you compare it to the immediate transaction you can do with DLT technology. So it's not easy to measure at this point. So you cannot ban the technology, you have to test it. So we are in the process of tabling the final compromises. So all the parties, we have at the Econ Committee, we have to agree on the text, or not agree, but at least you will see the majority, what can be supported. And then as of September, it will enter the trilogues. So then you have the Council and the Commission. So representatives of the countries, the ministries, and then of the Commission that initiated the file. And then we will see how much we will proceed, or what we have to compromise even more. So the end of the file, I expect it to be by the end of this year. So what you can see is the compromise text in a few days. For the crypto assets, I think it's going to delay a bit more for several reasons. I think it's going to be September, and then it's going to enter the trilogues. So we're going to have to decide what's going to start being accepted or not. And I think by the end of 2021, we're going to have a very clear understanding. Then it's going to be like a phase where we can adapt, to give time to everybody to follow and implement it and adapt its own national regulation, because it's going to be basically a European one that's going to cover all the member states. But they have to also include it in their own systems.
How about the YouTube channel? So there's a YouTube channel that talks about what's coming with the regulation. Have they thought about having, a YouTube channel or a Discord server, and they talk there? Because most of the community doesn't go to the government websites to read.
That's true.
Maybe
we could have like a discussion with that. I can have a couple of my advisors, because I have also a lawyer working with me, because it's very technical at one point. So politically, what we have to do, my standard architecture, okay? So what I have to do is to try to understand the basics of the technology. I try to see how mining works, so I open my computer to see how that looks. Because if you don't open your computer, it sounds something crazy to see how Bitcoin works, what's the difference with Ethereum. Once you have this understanding, then you need to have lawyers or economists to know all the financial regulations and all the law, like consumer protection consumer protection mainly, that could apply. And you discuss and say, listen, I want it to be innovation friendly. I want to be able to have new players in the market. I want it to be to have cross-border activity, and I want to have interoperability, which is also another problem also with NFTs, no? I mean, if I buy something in your platform, how easy can I transfer it to another platform?
There are protocols though.
I didn't know.
There are two protocols, ERC 721 and 1155. So there are protocols, but
with everything they're interoperable with all the NFTs.
Theoretically, it's a smart contract that has to use these specific protocols, but some platforms they decide to use something different. For example, Nifty Gateway uses cash to buy the NFT. The NFT, they don't use even Ether or blockchain or Bitcoin. So they use a different system to mint, store, or whatever. But other platforms, like for example, OMG Drops uses when somebody buys, immediately it's available to all the other platforms because the smart contract and people can offer it. Of course, this opens a new kind of worms because then my NFT got sold and now it's traded in another platform. Maybe it's traded now in Coinbase in the future. So because it's a smart contract, I don't have control other than creating it, and then it's wide, nobody knows.
So this is another issue because if you have to issue like the purpose, the prospectus of your NFT, and if it changes platforms, then it changes the security, the protection that it has. And this is something that, for example, it needs to be taken care of, like to say either it's going to be transferred together with the asset, the NFT, the digital asset, let's say, or it has to be, let's say, you have to accept the new terms of services and you have to be released of any liability as soon as it changes marketplaces. So these are some issues that's why I think we need also a separate file to deal with it. But as I said, by the end of 2021, you will have a clear understanding of the MiCA and the DLT, and I'm waiting for the NFT to arrive. I can send you like the final text we are at this point, and if you check EPRS is the European Parliamentary Research Service. It usually has a, let's say, a 10-page of explaining what DLT and MiCA will do and how they have to deal with it. So it's how we start understanding the file, because if you start reading the MiCA, it's like 200 pages, the amendments were 1,200. So it's going to be complicated to have access to that. But I agree, YouTube would be fine. We have just a EPRS, just summaries of what we do.
Yeah, like even Instagram lives where it's like a minute of like, hey guys, this happened, this is what you can do. This is the link if you want to geek out. But this is like what's happening. I think this is how most people like to consume information at this moment, like know the basics. Someone had, you had a question, Ron.
So is there, I mean, maybe I missed it, but is there a way to create a CERPAC, like a safe harbor for entrepreneurs in Greece that's not like the whole European thing, but just in Greece, and then bring more entrepreneurs here to try, launching NFTs, launching token, maybe like a 3-year thing that, we're not gonna like put you in jail for 3 years, but then after 3 years, it have to be something meaningful enough that.
Yeah, so for the first time, Europe is creating a sandbox. So this DLP, it's a pilot regime. It's a sandbox basically, where you can have 5 years of protection to test the technology, and we're having the time to enter and to phase out and to exit. And what we're trying to achieve is to make sure that if you're licensed, if you succeeded in this pilot, to not have to go through another procedure once you exit. So we try to make it smooth in order to enter, test it, under like legal certainty and protection, and then to be able to exit and keep working that, so hopefully to become like a permanent understanding of how the technology should work. So specifically for NFTs, it could happen in the European level as long as we don't interfere with like the financial regulations, and we don't violate that, or it's not covered by EU. So for example, what if I'm not mistaken, some people are asking me if we could have like a tax-free zone for special testing of technology. So Europe cannot have tax-free zones. What we can have is incentives for a horizontal sector. So because then you create competition issues among Europe. But what we can do is to say, listen, in Europe, I believe that blockchain is very interesting as a technology. So I create another like sandbox, a layer of security that you can test it here in our environment, and we will offer you like incentive support, we'll
like
follow
subsidies against what you need to pay or something.
They could, yes, but again, it has to be for the technology. It cannot be just for some players or a special service, because it creates competition issues. But you can choose per sector to create incentives. So Barcelona, they did that for startups. They created like a very comfortable environment, flexible for new entrants in the market. They give them licensing very fast. They, the opportunity to open a company very fast. So they can say like for startups, especially I think the fintech, they made it really easy. So they can choose to give you incentives, but tax-free cannot happen. It can only have incentives in specific sectors. Again,
but that's for
like energy
companies, right?
sector. What?
It's so that's for companies, but it's not. So Portugal, for example, allows people to not pay capital gains on digital assets for like some period of time, right? As a result, a bunch of people that work in crypto, that lead some of the DeFi projects and so on, that now run like billions and billions of dollars, have actually moved there. So my sense is that over time, you will see spillovers from knowledge, from networks, from things like that. And Portugal stands to benefit, right? So does that somehow come to, like, is that synergistic? Is that another angle to approach things? Seems there is, for company-specific tax incentives that you just mentioned, there seems to be a block there, right? But are there other ways to go about it? Is there wiggle room somewhere else?
So what's happening when we have like exceptions is like, for example, even Belgium, they have not dealt with it at all. So either they're waiting Europe to prepare it, and then it's going to apply to all member states. They will have a 2 years period of, let's say, introducing and adapting to the European suggestion regulation on directive, depends what we have. Or they start having like penalties if they don't do that. So as long as there is no European, level playing field, anybody can like actually have a different approach. And this is when friction comes and legal uncertainty comes, especially for technologies that they are, let's say, used cross-border, because if something goes wrong, then you don't know who is liable really.
So they're doing it until they can't do it, like.
Actually, I think that what you see now, it's going to be taken care of at the European level, and then they will have to adapt. So until we have something, you can find countries that have a different understanding. But there is always there are always countries that they have a different approach and different laws. Like, for example, Switzerland has prepared a framework for the blockchain environment much faster, and because also you don't have to let's say, harmonize everything. In Europe, we have so many differences, and we don't have competence in the financial sector. We just started like 5 years ago to have capital markets union and a banking union. And we still talk just about mainly the systemic banks that they are under the central bank supervisory control. But then you also have you're exposed also to other risks. Once something becomes a systemic risk for Europe's financial system, then something will come up to change that sooner or later.
Right, but that's like in the eye of the beholder, right? Like what constitutes like systemic risk and what not?
It's usually in the eyes of the supervisory authorities.
The beholder.
It's CSDs and ESMA at this point. They are the ones in the EBA, and we have like a fintech task force that is looking at all these new possibilities in the fintech industry, and they are proposing new rules. That's why we have the CSD, the Trasta Electrica.
Can I ask something else? Are these committees are they sampling info from people that work in the industry?
Are they what?
Are they sampling information from people that work in the industry, that work at the very frontier of the industry, or is the information flow more sterilized?
They're looking on Reddit.
That would be a good strategy, actually.
There has been this European Observatory Forum where the main players were there. For example, BitFury participated,
right.
that I know. of, and so they had a discussion and understanding of the challenges for all these new players in this field, in order to suggest like recommendations or standards that they would be used. But this works at the level of the Commission. That's how the text was prepared, by having like different discussions with all the stakeholders. What I can tell you is that I know that some of my colleagues, for example, they don't even accept to talk to some people. But this is another problem, because they have perceptions in their heads that they are in defense of anything that's innovation friendly. I don't know, but this is something.
Is it correlated
it's a
with
mentality
age?
thing. What?
Is it correlated with age at all? Is it like that, or is it just like a?
Actually, not really. Yes, usually it's like not really.
Okay.
No, I have to admit that also for me, I'm growing old. No, it's not age. You have to be, I have to have a mentality, you're innovation friendly or not.
Yeah.
There are also young people that like 25 that they told me we have to ban Uber because it doesn't follow the rules. So we don't have to adapt the rules to include that Uber will have to follow a specific regime, but we have to ban it. So I saw that with young people, and then I saw an older guy, a very conservative, that wanted to ban technologies, a younger one who wanted to ban it because of the environmental footprint. So no, it's not the age thing.
Right.
The interesting thing, the interesting question is, and I think that's why Elias was getting to, is how we can do this. Can we do this in Greece? Can Greece somehow help create a community? Because that was the conversation that was happening yesterday during the hackathon in here, and that's obviously why we're doing this event. There are other cities, obviously in the US, I'm not even comparing the thousands of people there, but there are European cities that try to create a community of crypto people. And here, there are people now from, people that were here from Kraken, from Coinbase, they were from bigger companies, from a lot of US companies being here, and a lot of people that know technology, blockchain technology, very deep, but there are not many Greek crypto companies, and the community is small, even though there are a lot of people. Like we had like more than 3,000 people registering, and then more than 1,000 people creating wallet addresses and playing around. But what happens after the event? We need, in order for a community to thrive, it needs support, it needs people to learn.
Anyway, it can happen if that's the question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we already we opened a call for European digital innovation hubs that they can decide the priorities. So for example, you can have in Greece a hub that would have also European funding, co-funded by our government, and they will, let's say, they will establish an ecosystem of specific characteristics that will be decided by the ones that they will respond to this call. For example, you can suggest to have a digital innovation hub on cybersecurity, and build an ecosystem around that, and say whoever wants to be part of it, they will have like mentoring or skills, or they will be, the market could find everybody interested here. You can have blockchain, of course, digital innovation hubs, or artificial intelligence. So it's up to the ecosystem itself to start preparing how they would like to see an initiative like that being like formed, say, like be described and designed. It is possible, and we have funding. So when I called for the first file, I chose to not do it through Econ Committee, which is interesting because I chose to deal with the technology as an infrastructure to avoid all these financial regulations, because blockchain is not just the crypto assets, it's also using it to for smart contracts, to control the supply chains, to issue like, you know, like tokens that they have nothing to do with crypto assets. So, and we opened a 700 million funding to test projects. So, for example, we tested the project like for certification, if I'm not mistaken, on your studies. So you finish the university, you have your certificate. We validate it on blockchain, and it's connected to the. It would be connected to the Europass, but the design was not good, so it didn't succeed. We had a project. It's called My Health, My Data. If you Google it, it was the first project supported by the European funding. Some countries participated. Greece delayed, but Greece entered also the a group of countries, let's say, that they wanted to test blockchain technology. We didn't do much. So if you design an idea around which we could establish this ecosystem and take it to have European support, it could happen, yes, but it needs a bit of like preparation also from the, it's called to self-organize a bit before the government and then Europe comes to support it. But yes, it can happen.
Could this group try to change the regulations for Europe? I mean, it's one-way communication, or maybe this group could say, hey guys, because we innovate, we see that this regulation is a little bit, because maybe that's a way for people. Okay.
It is, because these are European digital hubs, and then Europe has the good thing that once it does regulation, it's never like something that stops. Even GDPR, you have updates, you have revisions, so you can change the rules. For example, for the cybersecurity NIS directive, which was a network information system directive that included a few sectors, now we include more sectors. We have a revision, we have the NIS 2, it includes public administration, so they have some responsibilities to have better cybersecurity protection. So they can test technology constantly, and once they realize there is something to be dealt with, then they can prepare a revision of the existing regulations already. Because these technologies are actually exponential, and you cannot say, I'm going to have like an old box that everybody should adapt. You have to always be able to update your rules. Like NFTs. We were supposed to finish with MiCA and DLT, and then NFTs happen, and now we have to open up something. Something different to cover it.
Do we have questions? I think we have 4 questions. You're at the end. Yep.
Hi. One question I wanted to ask, because as artists from Greece that are doing our work in NFTs, we want to attract customers, investors in our art. And as far as I understand from the discussion, there are many logical privacy concerns when somebody invests in NFTs through his crypto wallet, because his transactions might be visible, other people might see his whole portfolio, how much money he has, etc. Is there a way, as artists and as European artists, to be able to guarantee to our customers that their privacy will be more safe, so it's safer to invest in European artists doing NFTs because it is safer for them. It's like an extra feature. Is there a way to do this, or something that can be built up as an extra, as a plus for them, that if they invest in this way, it's safe because other people cannot see their whole portfolios?
Very good idea.
No, that's a smart idea, but this is not up to, I mean, Europe is not designing how the platforms work. It just creates the obligations that they have to follow to protect your rights and also the investors' rights. And normally it should not be open to anybody to see the transactions, just the supervisory authority actually. And so this has to do with the design of the marketplace. So if the design of the marketplace protects your identity, then it's protected. But it could be a good feature from like Europe's side to introduce, like to call or give incentives to achieve that and say, because as I said, for creators, we want to have like a new way to cover what could happen through NFTs, to be able to, let's say, give up your rights, or like make sure that you will be able to give a copy of your work usually, because you are the author, you have the initial creation. You cannot transfer that. You always will remain the creator, but you can give the rights to others to sell it, use it, resell it. So we have to make sure that this would happen in a safe way, and we can call for this kind of protection. But what were your concerns there, so that they don't know the amount of?
Yes, that they feel that if they use the specific platform to buy our work, that it's safe for them, and other people will not have access to their data, and mostly their financial data. So we make it more attractive for them because it's safe if they buy from us.
Normally, all the platforms are designed to not reveal who did what. I mean, even now with Softbiz, you see what happened. There were, I think, this the first internet code on Python that was sold for I don't know, 5 million. We don't know I think who bought it, so it was it's not revealed. So it can and should be protected. But that's a very good idea to call also for this kind of protection to be, let's say, safeguarded more in Europe. You have it also. You don't allow anybody to see who.
We don't allow the name, but you can see the addresses from the blockchain. You can see that this asset moved to that address, and if that address made another purchase, then you can start figuring out who. For example, for the Beeple, where that was acquired, I don't know, 55 million or what. The person we know who bought it at the end of the day, and then we know the people around him, and that Beeple actually has done transactions with him in the past. So it's very difficult to escape the transparency of the blockchain with also the negative that people know that you are the person that paid all this money.
But also it depends on what you use by design, on the architecture of the token that you're using, for example, or the blockchain that you use.
Sadly, no, because the moment you buy anything, there will be a transaction saying that this, whatever.
The transaction, but you can have tokens that they are not being traced. They cannot be traced.
They would say that you did something, and that was your address. Even if you didn't take the NFT and you got another token or whatever that represents the NFT, they would see that you did something, like this address is doing something. And then they could figure out maybe. So you have to be very careful that you never tie your address to your real name.
I can say just one thing. I can say that when I started talking about blockchain, I knew that this can happen because we had cases where fraud happened, and then when the investigators came in, they could track down everything because they could follow the traces, because this technology that leaves traces actually. There are some technologies that don't leave traces, but you need to invest a lot to achieve that. You have to really, it really has to work it. So I said, if you want to do something illegal, blockchain is not the best way to do it because it always leaves traces, right? Cash remains.
For correct, there are obviously you could use the cash, and there are blockchains that they obfuscate things. You could really hide your identity, but NFTs are sold mostly on Ethereum blockchain and other blockchains where there is the track, because you also want to see who had the NFT, how much he paid, so there is an actual receipt. Like imagine if I told you, this is a Picasso NFT, and you see that never originated from Picasso. So
anyway, this is something though it's going to be discussed now. So GDPR is covering that your name is not there and your sensitive data are protected, but all the metadata, so who, when, who without the name, the number, this usually can reveal everything. So we will try to do with it. As of the end of the year, we have the Data Act coming. So it's a file that covers anything that's not covered by GDPR. So we will see if we can have some levels of extra security there. I have to talk also to people that they can tell me how the technology could offer this possibility.
Hello. First of all, I think we should thank you all because you are trying to explain to Europe things that matter a lot to us, and I guess this is a very hard job to do. I'm also concerned about if the regulation will be able to adapt to new cases for NFTs. For example, recently Uniswap switched to the new version where they offer you an NFT for your position. So in the same time, it's a financial product with maybe some fees included there that are claimed, and also an NFT. And another example is the sharding, like the Beeple piece that was sharded into many pieces, and out of that a new currency, an ARC token appeared. And also another example are synthetic assets that, for example, you can buy many stocks. And I'm worried about will the regulation catch up to all the new cases that appear for.
No, already not. It's not the case. That's why I said that we need to listen. You also don't want regulation to be super fast because it could prevent innovation to happen. But as I said, whatever is not covered by DLT or MiCA, and I think NFTs actually are not covered because they're like, it's a hybrid technology, it could like be both things. So in order to don't try to fit it in an old box, we have to create new boxes. So I already I called for that, and I'm waiting. I have some calls next week, and I will ask. So as politicians, we have the right to 3 times per 5 years to ask for new regulation when we see that something needs to be addressed. And January will open the possibility for me to do that, but I can also, let's say, convince or make sure that people in the Commission are aware that these are the challenges, and then they can come up and say that, listen, we realize that, and they can come on their own, so they can come faster. So the Parliament still is not strong enough call for legislation. We have to make sure that the Commission will call for legislation, or the Council, and we can initiate, we can tell them that we are worried about something, but we cannot decide for it. But in this case, I think they will come up as soon as they realize what we are. So we're preparing now an explanation of why we should deal with all these ideas. So I didn't know the first one that you mentioned, I knew the other two.
It's quite big now, the Uniswap, because many people...
Big in the crypto community, big in the 6 people here.
No, that's a possible question though. How big something should become to attract your attention for regulation?
I just mentioned that these 25 stable coins of 5 billion market value, they already considered to be important enough to introduce a file. So I guess that it's already important enough to talk about this technology. So I think it's not that it creates systemic risks, but it needs consumer protection regulation, and also the IP rights also to be protected in this hybrid form that you can sell it or trade it or auction it, to make sure that we understand the liabilities. What happens if somebody, I don't know, takes your authenticity certificate and they cannot track them down again, but you still have the physical asset? I mean, or if the platform collapses, what's then? It's not authentic. So there are some issues that we need to address.
Guys, we won't have any other questions now because we will finish in 5 hours. But we'll also have a small break to catch our breath, and we'll continue. Thanks a lot.
But let me say that if you have any ideas on this issue we discussed,
of course,
please do send me, but not just questions. Because when I try to find ways to respond to what is decentralized finance, I'm struggling to find people that actually teach what blockchain is to come up with a definition. And trust me, it's really not easy. So if there are no also ideas, just to say we don't want regulation or we want regulation is not helping a lot. Would be great if with your knowledge you could help us improve. So what happens, because he asked the question, I was thinking I already have some questions for you, but I would expect to have...
Let's do it.
Yes, what happens if you issue an NFT for the work of somebody without their permission? I mean, can this happen?
Oh yeah.
Yes, so I'm going to deal with it. If you violate the terms of the license that's granted by an NFT, and what if you issued a license worth and the extent of this license, if you enforce the terms and conditions related to an NFT, and if you observe these rights and image rights of individuals who are exposed in the work under the NFT format. So I have stuff that I need to find answers, and I need help.
You can crowdsource them. Put them up somewhere and ask people to crowdsource the answers, right? On GitHub or whatever. And they can do a pool.
We can help you. We can help
you do that.
I will do that. I'm doing it through the association of the stakeholders that gathered in ATPA, for example.
Right. But it doesn't need to be this, for you to also get a bit more affinity with the fabric of how interactions in this space work, and how business in this space works, and how business in DeFi and so on works. It would be interesting to experiment with the media that the industry works, right? So maybe it's a Discord server, maybe it's a discourse server, which is basically a forum where you upload sort of topics, and then the members of the forum, which could be whitelisted or not whitelisted or whatnot, come and actually give you input.
I'm thinking how I can do that, but that's a good idea.
Yeah.
What will hold you back? Is there any regulation that will stop you from asking the question on the internet and getting answers?
No, I can we're in the internet, so I will. You will find me.
We'll talk and guys, obviously.
That's a good question, John. Sorry about the Greek central bank. Because if you go to the website, you will see that don't trust Bitcoin, don't touch Bitcoin, and you are a Greek citizen that goes to Europe and says everything about blockchain. Maybe they have to think all about this, how they are going to proceed with that notion of blockchain. Not say this.
It's different, Bitcoin and blockchain. I told you that Bitcoin is quite special because it's completely decentralized and you cannot have somebody liable for whatever happens unless the ones that they own big parts of it and they can manipulate the market, or then you can find some liabilities there. But in the end, this is different from blockchain or stable coins. You saw that Libra failed and it didn't proceed because you cannot have a private service platform issue a global currency because they don't have the let's say the responsibilities that the banks do have if something again happens. So I want to have a guarantee of my deposits. I don't want to go back and see my empty account and then nobody will be liable for that. And some people actually don't have the knowledge to protect themselves from that. So this would, as I said, there will be a European approach by the end of the year, hopefully, that will clarify.
We are going to have a digital currency
Yes.
in the next years.
There will be.
There seems to be an adoption.
There will be a digital euro. I don't know how it's going to be used yet, but it's already, I think, described very, very well, and they have prepared for that. Because I mean, the banks are using it already in several ways, but we should be able to take the advantages of that, like all these hidden fees that we're paying for, which is trillions in Europe. They can be removed if you use blockchain technology. But you just have to prepare the infrastructure, and since China is doing that, Russia is doing that, Europe will have to do that. Also to compete if there is a Libra or an Amazon coin coming up. They will probably come as payment services, not as an asset provider, but still we will definitely have a crypto euro soon. So they will change the way they deal with blockchain.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Eva.